Welcome to the Carbon Credit Ecosystem Dialogue. To officially kick off today's event, I'm pleased to invite the coordinator of program, Dr. Adawiyah, to deliver the opening and welcoming remarks.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Carbon Credit Ecosystem Dialogue. We are delighted to bring together such a diverse and dedicated group focused on tackling climate change through innovative solutions. Today, we will delve into the intersection of credits, corporate responsibility, and algae innovation in our keynote session, reflecting our collective commitment to sustainable progress. Our panel on navigating the carbon credit landscape will provide invaluable insight from industrial leaders, sparkling ideas and fostering collaboration. Let's seize this opportunity to share ideas, build partnership, and drive meaningful change. Thank you for being here, and let's dive in and make a difference together. Thank you.
Thank you to our coordinator for the one welcome remarks. We are now ready to begin our keynote session, focusing on the theme Carbon Futures, Credits, Corporate Responsibility, and Algae Innovations. Our first speaker is Mr. Matt Ma, Sustainability and Climate Director at Deloitte, Hong Kong. Mr. Ma will be discussing the fundamentals of carbon credits and how they can be effectively implemented. Mr. Ma, the floor is yours.
So I'm Mac. You can call me Mac. I'm the director of Deloitte Climate Sustainability, actually based in Hong Kong, and I got more than 15 years working experience, and starting from 2008 in carbon-related areas, starting from like clean development mechanism. That's a carbon credit type connected to EU ETS. And after that, I actually worked in Australian Commonwealth government on ESG compliance and Australian carbon credit market. Like 3 years ago, I came back to Hong Kong and start my new career in Deloitte. And now I'm also the carbon accounting lecturer of HKI CPA. So first thing first, I need to give a brief introduction about Deloitte. So you may know that Deloitte is one of the big fours, but probably you don't know that we are the largest among the big fours. And we do have a lot of sustainability related initiatives. And we have some iconic wins like we helped Hong Kong Exchange to draft their ESG guidance and corporate net zero guidance. And we also helped the first Singapore-based insurance company to commit it to net zero. And we do have a lot of sector-specific decarbonization pathway. And the most important thing is we actually is the only consulting company that committed to net zero globally. And there's no other companies can do this. And we also committed to renewable energy 100%, and we also committed to EV 100%. And the reason I'm talking about this is to tell you that for Deloitte, we actually manage ourselves first before we deliver anything to our client. And most important reason is I know some colleagues, we have some colleagues from Malaysia today sitting among here. Hi, yeah. And I just want to make sure that those messages will deliver to my boss and reflect to my bonus. Okay, yeah, just make sure. So let's come to the topic. So what's the meaning of carbon credit and what features carbon credit projects should have? That's actually not from any books. And that's based on my experience, and all those knowledges are actually summarized by myself. So if there's anything wrong, any expertise there, and we can have a discussion during the Q&A session, okay? So based on my understandings and some discussions with expertise among the industry, I think carbon credit is a market-based eco-compensation. It's so probably you think that eco-compensation was basically by government, but for carbon credit, it actually initiates a mechanism that in the free market, so the carbon credit buyers or end users can actually pay the money directly to the carbon credit project developers and to compensate their efforts on climate-friendly projects. So you may want to know what type of project can be compensated, or what's a feature of carbon credit projects is the most important features. Here are two features that I think it doesn't matter if it's compliance market or voluntary market, but if you have these two type of features, which means you got the good quality carbon credit. So first one is innovative market enabler. The best example is our honored host Atoz. So they will give you introduction about their business later. So I gonna skip this one. So second one is with significant co-impact. And this topic has been brought to a highest level for recent years. So we got very representative here today. So they may know that they were actually challenged by Guardian like 2 years ago for the Red Plus project. And one of the most important reasons is they believe there's not enough co-benefit. So what's co-benefit? We call it SEE. So for social perspective, you should create more jobs and improve local infrastructure, etc. And the environmental side, like protecting biodiversity, improving like soil, water, air quality. And the example for economic perspective is diversified income sources, stimulating green economies. I know there are a lot of potential carbon credit developers here today as well. So before you ask the question if my project can be a carbon credit project, I do want you to set up this mindset is if my project can actually bring those co-benefits to local communities. That's the most important thing of carbon credits. It's even more important than if it's really can reduce emissions. But of course, emission reduction is the basis of everything. But you need to have the different things like co-impact to make sure that your project is high quality, because there are really a lot of so-called greenwashing carbon credit projects in the market so far. So I want to share something interesting here. It's a case study. This is the largest forestry project in desert. Actually, was implemented like more than 10 years ago. That's my first iconic project. So this project, this photo was actually taken by me. That was my colleague, and this project developer started to plant trees in the desert, like starting from maybe 30 years ago. And they used their specific method to help to settle those sand, to make sure that they won't float everywhere, and then start to plant trees. And the trees can rarely survive in the desert. But after like 30 years, this is the pictures now. So we don't even need to ask what benefit that you can bring to local communities. I don't even need to say any word, right? Yeah, of course I can write I helped them to write like more than 500 pages report to demonstrate this topic. But obviously nobody gonna say this project is like greenwashing or fraud, right? And this is the whole journey of carbon credit that I want to share with you. So starting from the key stakeholders that's of any carbon credit. So first thing first, consultant. Yeah, I put Deloitte here. You know what I'm gonna say, right? Yeah, Deloitte is the most important thing of this project, that we help the project to be registered and issued. And there are other very important stakeholders, like project developers, right? So for project developer, you can be project owner or you can be just a project developer. Because for the project developer, the definition is that you got the carbon rights. You can treat the carbon credit legally, right? And another one is a financier, it's a project investor. We all need money to develop the project. And if you can see the legend here, the financier can actually be participant in the project from any stage. And of course, we need the registry. I put Vera here because we got be honored Vera today and to join this meeting. And another one is a off-taker and buyer. It's also very important. So because you really want someone to purchase your credit. And another important stakeholder is a validation and verification body called VVB. They are the third-party auditor. So let's go through the legend together. So normally there are three phases. We call it readiness, registration, and issuance. And for readiness check, we start from screening. And for screening, we will, so probably some project developer will come to us and say, okay, just help me to screen out if this project can be a carbon credit project. So as consultant, we will definitely check some very basic information, like if you got additionality, if you have, or if you are a market enabler, or if you have any co-impact of the local community, and if we can find any methodology that can fit. And then we will do a feasibility study, including technical and financial. So technical speaking is if you got all the legal documents you got, and if you can pass any test running under any methodology. And financially speaking, it's for you. It's for project developer to make the decision that if it's worth to do that, we will estimate the cost for you. And after that is the project development funding. It's actually optional. It's not all the project can get the project development funding. And after that is a registration process, starting from project design document writing. That's actually all those work is actually under consultant, and then we will provide validation support as well, and go on-site validation with the third-party auditor, then go to registration to the registry, and after it successfully gets registered, then we will start the process of verification and monitoring. And in the best case that after registration, there will be some carbon credit buyers or takers come to you and sign the ERPA, the emission reduction purchase agreement with you. And then we will have to support tracking and document all the monitoring report need and all the data, and help you to calculate how much carbon credit gonna generate in a certain period. Then we will implement the remedial action. And we will again go on-site with third-party auditor and help them to draft submit all the documents they need and help them to draft the verification reports together. Then submit to Vera again, and hopefully we can get the insurance of carbon credits then to sell to the off-taker and buyers. This is like a business as usual case, but now in practical, actually, in most of the case, Vera just allow that the first issuance actually can be combined with registration. They call it the initial verification, which will shorten the period that all the project developers can get their carbon credit at the moment that they get registered, and they can actually got return in a shorter period. So thanks to Vera. And this is a carbon credit cycle from project owner and consultant's perspective, that current workflow. Most of things I've introduced actually, but I want to emphasize the project verification verification process, because the project verification is actually it's a recurring part. We do it like every year or twice or every 2 years or even every 5 years, depends on the type of the project. And the most important thing is you haven't done anything after you get registered and get the first carbon credits. You have to monitor it and run the project, operate the project properly. And there are a lot of projects who are actually being challenged because after they get the first payment, they will stop running that and it become a fraud or greenwashing. For example, for any forestry project, okay, you got the first payment, then they started to cut off the trees. So again, every project developer should bear this in mind, that carbon credit project is not a method or not a project for you to earn the money all by yourself. It's to benefit the local communities, benefit everyone. And you should take the responsibility when you try to start any carbon credit project. Yeah, here's something interesting to share again. This is another iconic project that we are implementing now. It's in Papua New Guinea. This is the largest forestry project in Asian Pacific area. This is a picture that I took from helicopter. This is a bit interesting because the project developer was actually a logging company, starting from like 20 years ago in Papua New Guinea. They got every legal document to do the logging business, but after the communication with local communities and also they did a lot of peer analysis with other logging companies in Papua New Guinea, but they found the logging business is not actually making local people live better. So they found that this business is not sustainable. Probably we're gonna make some money in a short period, but in a longer term or even just 10 or 20 years, we will find that the local people, especially the local people, they lost everything. So far, even they are living in a difficult time, but at least they got those resources. But if they do logging business, taking those resources away, and for local people, they maybe get some cash flow, but like 20 years later, they will get poor again and they lost the resources. So this logging company, they spent like $1 million money to build the relationship and build the infrastructure for the local communities. And we actually get supported, sorry, I just hide the faces. So we got a lot of support, and we can feel the passion from local communities, from the local people, that we are so welcomed. Because the logging company, the project developers, spend a lot of money on the infrastructure and help them to build a school, build the hospital, and also try to improve their living quality by setting up a lot of like water purifier, something like that. So, but of course, after the project developers spending a lot of money on local communities, they got some opinion, and they got some noises from their board members that we have to make money, right? So they just search around, see that all what we did can be compensated, and they tried to apply for a lot of funding from like UN or World Bank. But turned out after consulted a lot of consultancy firms, they came to Deloitte and saying that we want to do carbon credit project. And this is also, I think, a beautiful model of a carbon credit project. I think I don't need to demonstrate what local the co-benefit that they're gonna generate again. So again and again, I want all the project developers to bear in mind. Okay, so this is high quality carbon credit project. Yeah. So this is pretty much what I shared today. So any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Matt, for the interesting sharing. We are open the question for the floor.
Thank you, Matt. I'm David, a consultant from Hong Kong. I want to know, besides whether there are other registry or verifier, just like the gold standard. So what's the differences between different methodology and in different jurisdiction or different exchanges? They have different requirements on the carbon credits. Say, for example, maybe the carbon credits generated from China is different from the US or from the Europe. So how to make the widely acknowledgement or the recognition of carbon credits throughout the world instead of just they get differences and the gaps between how to fill that. Thank you.
Well, thanks, David. But it's really a hard question. But after all, I think personal opinion, there are some political reason behind, right? At the phase 1 of EU ETS, they recognize actually every credit generated from all around the world, including developing countries, least developed countries, and they even have the GI program for all the developed countries. But starting from the phase 3 of EU ETS, they only accept the carbon credit from least developed countries. And just recently, SCVCM saying that they won't endorse any renewable energy project. So there are some supply-demand reason behind that, but there are also a lot of political reasons, like China, because I'm Chinese. China government always think that they were actually against by the international organizations. And indeed, there are some greenwashing projects in China as well, and so does in like Brazil or other countries. It's so hard to say that we can avoid the jurisdiction issue. Yeah. But what I want to say is, at least in Malaysia, we can still have the way to try our best to do what we need to do, yeah, and leave all those matters behind. And for the project type, like I mentioned, it's also a supply-demand issue. But like renewable energies, because all the methodologies actually need your project got additionality. So one of the most important factor is penetration on the market. So like 20 years ago, renewable energy was like a fresh new idea, and there are not a lot of renewable energy projects. So carbon credits is like I mentioned, the eco compensation method to compensate those renewable energy projects. But now we know that there are a lot of solar panels and wind turbines everywhere. So since the penetration of renewable energy has been risen, so they don't have solid additionality. So that's why renewable energy is not welcomed again. But for innovative market enabler will always be welcomed, because they actually lead the trend on and lead the innovation of the technology and lead a bright future. Right.
Thank you, Mr. Matt. Is there any question from the floor?
Hello, thank you. Okay, I'm Nabila from University Technology Petronas. I have one question regarding the credit valuation. Based on my reading, I heard that the value of the credit will be different depending on the project. Either is it coming from the renewable energy, or maybe from the CCUS project, or from the carbon sequestration or mangrove plantation. So how do I find the value for each of these project? I mean, to translate into the carbon credit. Do you have any experience on this, and maybe you can share with me lah about the more details of this? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. This is also a very good question because the price transparency is a pain point for any carbon credit project. So far, more than 80% of carbon credit trading is actually OTC. So it's hard to find any like benchmarking price for any certain project. But we got this overview of different type of project. For example, again, renewable energy project credits is got the lowest price. That's based on some survey and also open markets, and also based on our knowledge communicating with the buyers. And they want CCUS project because CCUS project is carbon removal project. It's not avoid. So that will create higher value for sure. But there are some very vague boundaries like between the forestry project and the blue carbon project. Blue carbon project got slightly higher price, but it means it's better than forestry project, but how better is hard to quantify. I think it is also depends on the supply demand side, and it also depends on the end user's business nature. For example, if you are a paper making company, it makes a lot of sense that you purchase forestry credit because your material is actually from the forest. So to save the forest, that you will create more co-impact than any other industry, right? And for other sectors like transportation, they probably gonna prefer CCUS because CCUS will so far was implemented in like mining and oil and gas industry. So that's really depends on who is your buyer. It's hard to address the benchmarking price. Yeah. Sorry, I don't have this answer, but we are working on it. We are working with a lot of like international bank to try to solve this problem to give a benchmarking price.
Next, we have Technologist Tan Hontat, Director of Net Zero Operations at CIMB Ben Berhad. Mr. Tan will share insights on carbon credits from a corporate sustainability perspective. Please welcome Mr. Tan on the stage.
As we collectively strive towards a more sustainable future, the role of carbon credit in our corporate strategy cannot be understated. At CIMB, we recognize that integrating carbon credit into our sustainability framework is not just about meeting regulatory requirement or achieving net zero, but it's about driving real changes or driving positive changes for our environmental, our communities, and the broader economy. Before I go into the content, I would like to quickly give you a quick background on CIMB. CIMB Group is a leading focused Asian bank and one of the region's foremost corporate advisor. It's also a world leader in Islamic finance. The group is headquartered in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, and offers consumer banking, commercial banking, investment banking, Islamic banking, and asset management product and services. It is the 5th largest banking group by asset in Asia, and as of end of December 2023, we had around 33,000 staff and over 25 million customers. To understand the role of carbon credit in our operation, maybe let me explain why sustainability, first of all, is important to us. We have categorized why sustainability holds such a significance for our organization into 4 key aspects. Let's begin with the first aspect, which revolves around our core values. At CIMB, we firmly believe that sustainability is simply the right things to do. It encompasses achieving a delicate balance between our people, the planet we inhabit, and the profit we generate. On purpose, as an organization, is to build a high-performing and sustainable entity that not only advance the interests of our customer, but also contribute positively to the society as a whole. Moving on to the second aspect, we have focused on the impact of sustainability has on our business. First, embracing sustainability protects our enterprise value. In an era where climate change poses serious risks to global financial assets, it became imperative for us to safeguard our investment and operation. Additionally, sustainability opens up new market and business opportunity for us, particularly in areas such as sustainable and transition finance, where we can play a vital role in supporting the shift towards a more sustainable economy. The third aspect emphasizes the influence we have, as a financial institution. Financing play a central role in facilitating sustainable development and enabling just transition to a low carbon economy. CIMB aims to be catalyst for positive change, encouraging our client to adopt responsible business practices and lifestyle. By doing so, we contribute to collective effort aiming at achieving a more sustainable business and equitable business in future. Finally, the fourth aspect underscores the importance of our sustainability to our stakeholders. We recognize that sustainability is utmost significance to various stakeholders, including our investor, regulator, customer, and employees. Meeting their expectation and addressing their concerns not only fosters trust, but also positions CIMB as a responsible and forward-thinking institution that committed to sustainable practices. In summary, sustainability lies at the heart of CIMB Group ethos. We firmly believe that integrating sustainable principles into our value, business operation, influence, and stakeholder relationship can make a positive impact on the society while ensuring the long-term success of our organization. With that in mind, we have set our headline sustainability commitment. We want to be a sustainable leader in Asia, right? We adopt the S&P Global Corporate Sustainability Assessment, or previously known as DJSI, score as our main target. This allows us to benchmark our current position as we work towards a leader position. Under this main commitment, we have segregated our commitment into 3 themes, right? Under the climate change, we are committed to achieve net zero operation emission by 2030 and overall net zero by 2050. On the responsible banking theme, to minimize harm, we are committed to no financing of new coal and acid coal by 2040, alongside with no deforestation, peat, and exploitation commitments. We are also committed to maximizing the positive impact by mobilizing about 100 billion ringgit towards sustainable finance by 2024. On the social side, we have committed to invest at least 150 million over 5 years and 100,000 hours annually in employee volunteer activities by 2024 to proactively impact life, communities, and also businesses. At CIMB, we firmly believe in a strategic philosophy that integrates economic, environmental, and social consideration to every business decision we make. Our goal is clear: to prevent and minimize environmental harm, uphold human rights, and foster social equality and equity. To achieve this, we are dedicated to creating a meaningful impact. We understand that it's not enough to merely, reduce our ecological footprint, but we also must increase our handprint by generating positive change. This guiding principle permeates to every aspect of our organization, from sourcing to operation and from our product to services. By embracing this mindset, we strive to make a difference to the world. Our commitment extends beyond our endeavors. We recognize the importance of collaboration and also engagement to our partners within the ecosystem. Together, we aim to raise awareness and promote responsible behavior, both within our industry and beyond. We actively participate in international organizations, contributing our expertise to shape sustainability framework that benefits society as a whole. So it's important to recognize that the evolving role of carbon credits, right, is not just a mechanism for achieving carbon neutrality, but it's also a key component in holistic sustainability strategy. At CIMB, we firmly believe that carbon credit should not be the first line of action in our journey towards sustainability. Instead, they are to be used as a last resort an option to be only considered only after we have exhausted all our avenues to reduce our emission at source. Our commitment to sustainability is grounded in a deep understanding that true environmental stewardship begins with direct action. This means identifying and implementing measures to reduce our carbon footprint through energy efficiency, operational optimization, and adoption of renewable energy sources. Our approach is reflected in CMB Net Zero Roadmap for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emission. As many of you know, Scope 1 emissions are those that result directly from our operations, emissions that we have the most control over. Despite this control, we acknowledge that some emissions are incredibly difficult to eliminate entirely, particularly in areas of transportation and on-site fuel consumption. This is where carbon credit comes into play for us, primarily as a tool to offset those hard-to-abate Scope 1 emissions that are currently unavoidable. However, our commitment to carbon credit goes beyond immediate needs. CMB is taking proactive stance even though we do not have an urgent requirement for carbon credits today. We deliberately chosen to engage with voluntary carbon market, and this decision is driven by several strategic considerations. Firstly, we see immense value in gaining first-hand experience with the voluntary carbon market. The landscape of carbon trading and offsetting is complex and rapidly evolving. By participating now, we are not only purchasing carbon credits, but we are establishing a robust internal protocols and governance framework. This early involvement ensures that when carbon credit become an integral part of our net zero strategy, we are fully equipped to manage them with rigor and transparency that such a critical component demands. Secondly, our engagement is a demonstration of our support to the initiative of local regulators. We understand that the success of national and regional climate policies depends on the active participation of private sector as well. By stepping into voluntary carbon market, CMB not only aligning with this initiative, but also reinforcing our role as a leader in corporate sustainability within Malaysia and beyond. Furthermore, our early involvement sends a clear signal to our seriousness in meeting our net zero commitment. We recognize that achieving net zero is not just about setting targets. It's about taking concrete steps to meet those targets, even if it means moving ahead of minimum requirements. By purchasing carbon credits now, we demonstrate that our commitment to sustainability is not just aspirational, but actionable. In addition to this strategic reason, our engagement with carbon market is also a form of preparedness. Malaysia is in the process of developing a carbon pricing scheme, right? And while these specifics are still being worked out, we believe it is prudent to prepare ourselves now. By participating in the market early, we are positioning CMB to be ready to respond to effectively any future national requirement, ensuring that we remain compliant and competitive in the carbon-constrained world. To date, our carbon credit purchase has been modest in scale, but this is by design. We have strategically allocated these credits for two primary purposes. Some credits are being held in reserve for future use. This provides us flexibility and buffer against potential future needs. The rest credits will be retired as needed to offset our carbon emission, particularly hard-to-abate Scope 1, as we continue to pursue our net zero objective. It is important for us to note that carbon credit is not static, it's dynamic and evolve as we gain experience and regulatory landscape changes. But at the core of the strategy is a commitment to use carbon credit responsibly and strategically, always with the goal of minimizing of environmental impact as much as possible before turning to offset. Our perspective of carbon credit is one of careful consideration, grounded in a commitment to genuine sustainability. We see carbon credit as a valuable tool, but one that must be used cautiously in support broader effort to reduce our emission at the source. Our proactive engagement with the voluntary carbon market voluntary carbon market, reflects our dedication to leading by example. As part of our ongoing commitment with advancing sustainability and enhancing our capability in carbon market, on 11 September 2023, we actually signed a memorandum of cooperation with BCX, Bursa Carbon Exchange, marking a significant step towards our carbon credit journey. This partnership with BCX represents a strategic collaboration focused on several key areas that will greatly benefit our clients and reinforce our position in market leader in corporate sustainability. First and foremost, the MOC actually outlined our joint commitment to conducting collaborative capacity building initiative. These efforts are designed to enhance the knowledge and understanding of our clients regarding voluntary carbon market. As the market for carbon credit continues to grow and evolve, it is crucial for our client to well informed as well and equipped to navigate this complex landscape. Through this partnership, we aim to provide them with insights and tools that they need to participate effectively and responsibly in the carbon market. Secondly, our collaboration with BCX will enable the development of robust framework to ensure CMB readiness to conduct carbon credit transaction on behalf of our client. This is a crucial step in improving our client accessibility to carbon credits, enabling them to offset their carbon emission more effectively and align with their sustainability goals. By working together with BCX, we aim to establish a seamless and secure process for facilitating this transaction, ensuring that our client can participate in the carbon market with confidence. Lastly, the cooperation includes exploring opportunity on the usage of BCX for execution and transactional services related to carbon credits. This encapsulates activities such as buying, selling of carbon credits on behalf of clients, as well as retirement of such credits. We believe by leveraging BCX expertise and infrastructure, we can offer our clients a more comprehensive suite of services that meet their carbon credit needs, from acquisition to retirement, all within a trusted and efficient platform. With this is underscore our commitment to not only meeting our own net zero target, but also supporting our clients in their sustainability journey. By working closely with BCX, we are positioning CMB to play a pivotal role in facilitating carbon credit transaction and helping our clients achieve their environmental objective. As we come to the close of my session, I would like to leave you with a powerful reminder from the renowned, explorer and environmental advocate, Robert Swan, who said, "The greatest threat to our planet is the belief that someone else will save it," right? The word resonates deeply with the journey we are on at CMB and the broader mission of corporate sustainability. They remind us that the responsibility to protect our planet rests with each of us, both as an individual and as an organization. It is easy to look out to others, governments, NGO, or even other companies to lead the way, but the real lasting change requires all of us to step up and take ownership of our action. At CMB, we understand that our role in this global effort is significant, whether through commitment or to reducing emission, engaging in carbon market, or forging strategic partnership like the one with BCX. We are actively taking steps to contribute to a more sustainable future. But our efforts alone are not enough. The impact we can achieve together with our client partners and also communities is far greater. So as we move forward, let us all embrace the belief that we can make a difference, that we have the power to drive change, and that together we can build more sustainable world. Because in the end, saving the planet isn't the responsibility of someone else, it's the responsibility of all of us. Thank you for your time and your commitment to be part of this important journey. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Technologist Tan. We will open the floor for any questions.
Thank you so much for your insightful sharing. I got two questions. Firstly, actually, the CIMB, I'm not sure whether in Malaysia, the governments or the central bank have set the requirement or the threshold for green finance or sustainability linked finance. Because in Hong Kong, we just half of a year ago, the Hong Kong Monetary Authority has set the green taxonomy for the bank as a guidance. So I'm not sure whether in Malaysia, whether this is the common practice only for CIMB or for other banks, they will have the same behaviors. And the second question is, although CIMB focus on scope 1 and scope 2 emissions reductions, but what you mentioned is about the finance, and also you put emphasis on sorting out the behaviors from the markets to support them to do the green transition as well. So whether scope 3 emissions will be also taking into account into the climate goals of your bank. So as we all know that the IFRS has adopted the new proposal, and in the world, it is widely adopted, no matter in England, Europe, or even in Hong Kong next year. So scope 3 emissions, is it also into account of the bank or in the wider society in Malaysia? Thank you.
Maybe I answer the first question first. Yes, we have our own regulatory requirement on CCPT as well, which means climate change-based principle-based taxonomy, climate change principle-based taxonomy, which highlights which are green activities, which are not. So this guides our way in building our sustainability-linked financing. So that is for your first question. Question number 2 is scope 3. Yes, we do commit to both our own operational net zero and also our scope 3 net zero as well. While we have a shorter term for operational net zero, that basically means we will achieve scope 1 and scope 2 emission net zero by 2030, while our clients' emissions, we are aiming to have them net zero by 2050. That is including our category 15 scope 3. So to drive these changes, why I believe carbon credit have a role to play is we do believe that, you know, everyone would somehow rely on carbon credit to reduce the last mile or maybe the residual emission in the organization. To achieve net zero for our client, example, our client come from oil and gas industry, power industry, chemical sector, you know, all of them will need some form of carbon credit to be fully net zero. They can't be net zero without the support of carbon credit. Yep. Another question?
Hi, over here, sorry. So I think it's quite interesting to hear about the role that CIMB is going to play in terms of buying and selling, helping customers or clients to trade carbon credits. I was also interested to sort of hear your perspective in terms of how you think banks can play a role in terms of the carbon credit generation process instead.
Okay, so carbon credit generation process is divided into several stages, right? I believe on the project development side, I will leave it to the expert. But what we can really come into it is really on the financing side of it. So I believe at this moment, I think there's few key challenges. I think Matt from Deloitte also highlighted that is the carbon pricing. We need a signal of carbon pricing. Financing is pretty simple, right? When we finance, you want to ensure there is a credit certainty to certain project, right? So example, if you finance a deforestation project or forestry project that avoid deforestation, I think one thing that will come out of that project is really carbon credits. This is a source of revenue to us, right? So making sure the carbon credit have the right pricing, making sure there's an off-taker will helps to facilitate financing. So what role that we can play, I see that there's multiple role, but definitely we will leave it to the expert on project registration up to the issuance level. We can really help to facilitate transaction of carbon credits.
Hi, Mr. Tan. Thanks so much for your presentation earlier. I'm Azrul, I'm from Petronas. I just want to ask in terms of one of your slides said that you are only going to buy carbon credits for the last resort, right? So can I understand a bit from CIMB's decarbonization plan for scope 1 other than just buying carbon credits?
Yeah, sure. So if you know that there is a hierarchy for decarbonization, basically you start off from some of the low-hanging fruits. If you can look into it, it's really to reduce your own emission first. The nature of CIMB Bank is pretty different from maybe Petronas oil and gas company. We have a lot of electricity usage of our own operation, basically scope 2 emission. While our scope 1 emission is quite limited to fuel consumption from our backup generator set and also some of the fuel consumed in our vehicles. But most of it, actually more than 90% of scope 1 and scope 2 come from scope 2 emission alone. That basically means that we need to find ways to reduce our electricity consumption or source renewable energy for our electricity sources. So while the rest of it, example, things like fuel used in generator sets, fuel used in vehicles that we cannot reduce anymore, then we'll use carbon offset for that. So there's a rationale behind our strategy. But of course, there's different strategy for different companies that which probably need to think about for different industry.
We can have one last question from the floor.
Good morning, Mr. Tan. Lin from UKM. Just one question. Probably I'm not so familiar with carbon credits definition, but somehow when you have one presentation slide saying that CMB is buying carbon credits for future use, that's trigger me something. Can carbon credit actually like savings that we can actually keep it for like FD 2 years down the road, then we can use it again when we need that? It doesn't sound credible to me, because when you have a carbon credit, you have to have a basis where there's a project, or that is the project is actually still long lasting for the next 5 years. Then only you can say that that credit is still valid. So probably you can enlighten us how this carbon credit can be stored for future use. Thank you.
Well, carbon credit is just a piece of paper, right? So in the other way, it's a registry that keep track of the emission reduction that will happen maybe 5-6 years ago. Even some of the carbon credit we purchase today have a vintage of 3-4 years, right? So carbon credit is actually a piece of paper, put it this way, to prove that the emission actually happened some point in time, maybe 2-3 years back, right? So that we can actually use this as a proof of emission reduction that already happened. So carbon credit is a form of offset paper. So you can actually buy carbon credit, warehouse it, keep it, either for resale or either for own use purposes. So if you go to the market today and try to source for carbon credit, a lot of people come to you and say that, hey, I have a vintage year of 5 years ago or 10 years ago. Will you want to buy? Of course, internally, we have set a requirement that we do not buy carbon credits that is having a vintage that is actually more than 5 years, depending on the nature of carbon credits. The reason is the longer the carbon credit vintage is, the less impact it will deliver to the society, put it this way, or environment, right? So if you can buy a carbon credit that is only having 4-year vintage or 3-year vintage, that is best to do so. But sometimes in certain circumstances, people are still choosing those carbon credit beyond 5 years due to price reason, due to certain compliance reason. Yeah, it's still possible. But yeah, best practice is 5 years.
Dr. Razif will share his expertise on the innovative role of microalgae in carbon capture utilization.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and very good morning, everyone. How's everyone? Are you feel hungry by now? Not yet. All right. Okay. Hopefully you can stay with me for the next half an hour. Sorry, I have a sore throat this morning, so my voice is not really clear. But I try my best to sharing whatever that the things that we are doing at University Putra Malaysia. Also, we have a long list of the project with Atoz Carbon Cycle platform. All right. So we've been hearing about the carbon credits from Mr. Matt and Mr. Hong Tat. But what I'm trying to sharing with you is actually one of the potential projects that you can adopt as a carbon credits projects, right? Which is by having this microalgae. So what I'm going to share with you is basically the microalgae as a potentials what we call it biocarbon capture, which is bio CCU, right? So before we start with the microalgae, let's look at the pointer. It's not working. Okay, all right, sorry. Okay, all right. So when we talk about the microalgae, the first thing that we are having in our mind is actually on the CO2 capturing, which is, if you look at the capturing the carbon dioxide, is basically the process to capture the carbon dioxide from the sources before it released back to the atmosphere, right? So in order for us to capturing the carbon dioxide, there are two approaches, which is what we have here is basically in terms of CCU, which is carbon capture and utilizations, as well as the CCS, which is carbon capture storage. But what I'm going to highlight today is on the first approach, on the carbon capture and utilizations. So when we talk about the carbon capture utilization, is basically, it refers to the utilizations of the carbon dioxide to produce a product, right? So we have two routes here, which is we have the route of the CCU conversions, where it's actually the carbon dioxide is converted into a product using a chemical or biological processes that being used commercially, which is normally what we know is basically this CCU part of the utilization we can use in the manufacturing of the mineral. For example, we are producing the building materials, like a concrete productions that can utilize the CO2, as well as producing the chemical-based materials that we have, for example, the polymers, the plastics, as well as some sort of like the urea or fertilizer that basically under the conversions under the chemical. And what we are interested today is on the biological. How do we utilize the carbon dioxide that we capturing and they're using it in the biological way, which is by having the microalgae, right? And then there is a non-conversions route, which is we have the food and drinks, like whatever that we drink, the carbonated drinks, that basically using the carbon dioxide, as well as we have the horticulture, where normally in the farm, people pump in the carbon dioxide in the greenhouses to make the plants growing better, as well as we have the enhanced oil recovery, where they pump in the CO2 into the oil reservoir in order to extract out the oil. So those are the things we call it as a non-conversion route for the CCU, right? So I think, like I said, this is the thing that we are going to focus here today on the biological carbon capture using the microalgae. Does anyone working with the microalgae before, except from UTP and UKM? I saw a familiar faces, as well as we have a representative from TNB research as well here. So anybody working with the microalgae before? No? Okay, so let me introduce about the microalgae. So basically the algae that we know is basically, how do you know the algae? Have you eat sushi? Right? So the one that wrap the sushi is basically, what is it? It's a seaweed, right? So seaweed is basically is an algae, but it's not microalgae. Seaweed considered as a macroalgae that you can see using your naked eyes, right? Seaweed, right? And then what we are interested now is the microalgae, which is in the macro size. When they have a micro size, we cannot see the materials itself. You have to examine under the microscope to see the cell of the microalgae. So what you have to see is basically, you only see the green water, like what we have on our left-hand side is the green water. That basically is a microalgae. But if you examine under the microscope, you can see a tiny, tiny cell of the microalgae in it, right? So that basically the microalgae. So what's different the microalgae with the other plants? So microalgae behave like the plants. It undergo photosynthesis. When it undergo the photosynthesis, it requires CO2, of course, right? And then it requires lights, right? What else it require? It require, what do you require after this to get the energy? You require food, right? So microalgae require nutrients as well that you have to feed to them in order to make them happy. Then you also will get happier when you have that, okay? So basically, the microalgae is a microscopic cells, which is unicellular cell that living in the aquatic environment, you cannot find the microalgae on soil, right? So it should be living in the aquatic environment. So, which is meaning that it should be living in the water. Either it's a fresh water or either it's a marine water, right? So throughout the world, we have more than 50,000 of the species of the microalgae. In fact, in our group, we have identified more than 100 species of the microalgae, which is domestics that we isolated from the vicinity around us, right? So these microalgae, we call it as a green gold, right? Because it provides you a lot of potentials, not only capturing the carbon dioxide, but it also can be converted into other products. Later, we will see what other products that we can have, right? So why microalgae? Why people are interested with microalgae? Because number one is the scalability. In order for you to get the microalgae, whether you are required land or you also don't require land, right? So you can culture the microalgae on the lake, you can culture the microalgae offshore, you also can culture the microalgae inland as well, right? So it's in terms of the scalability, you can scale up according whatever the productions that you want, as long as you have the facilities that require to culture that microalgae. So the second one, in terms of the productivity, it has a very short sort of like harvesting cycle. For example, if you plant the trees, or if you plant, for example, the corn to produce the bioethanol, you have to wait for almost a year to get the biomass for the bioethanol, right? Because you have to harvest the corn and process it. But with the microalgae, it can go up to 5 to 10 days only to get the biomass for the product. So in terms of the productivity, it has a very high productivity compared to the other plants. And then in terms of sustainability, is renewable resources that you can get whenever, wherever that you need, right? And then in terms of the versatile applications, like it can use to produce food, it can use to produce fuel, it can produce and then pharmaceutical, nutraceutical, and other products that can benefits to the human. And then the most important thing is can genetically modify, which is a transgenic that, for example, if you require the microalgae that has a very high oil, lipids, you can do the transgenic in order to produce that particular breeds to get that particular oil, right? So that's why people are interested with the microalgae, right? So let's look on the how to produce the microalgae. It's a simple setup. In fact, you can imagine that you have the aquarium, which is a tank that you can grow the microalgae, but you have to make sure that the first thing that you need is the CO2, carbon dioxide, which is that basically the carbon source of the microalgae. And then the second one, you need a light, which is sunlight, right? But in Malaysia, we don't have any issue with the sunlight. We have 365 days around the year to get the sunlight. In fact, we have the excess lights to the microalgae. Some of the microalgae, they don't like excess light, then it will give the inhibitions to the culture, right? And then you need, the next one, you need the nutrients, which is you need the carbon, hydrogen, nitrogen sources in order to grow the microalgae, and you need the water, right? And then you need the container. Either it can be in the photobioreactor, we call it as a closed system, or it can be in the pond type system, which is on the sort of like raceway pond system, right? So those are these systems that have some advantage and they have some limitations on that. Okay, so that basically the generic setup to culture the microalgae. And then in order to get the product from microalgae, what you need to do is basically the first one, you need to cultivate the microalgae, right? So in order for you to get the product, the first thing you need to cultivate, once you get the optimum concentration of the microalgae, then you harvest the cell because you need to separate the water and then the solid. Because microalgae living in the water. So you need to separate it and then extract whatever the compounds that you need. Then you purify it and then you get the product. So that basically the generic process to get the product from microalgae. Right. So in terms of since we are in the carbon credits mode now, what we are talking about on the carbon dioxide, okay? So So the sources of carbon dioxide for microalgae, it can come from the direct air capture. For example, you can get from the air, where we have around 0.04% air, right? And then we also can compress the air, for example, from the cylinder or whatnot, and then you get the higher concentrations of the carbon dioxide is around 98 or 99% of the CO2. And the second source of the carbon dioxide for microalgae, it can be from non-biogenic category, which is it comes from the power plants, it comes from a cement manufacturer, or it can come from the ammonia productions that can release the carbon dioxide in the range of 6 to 60%, depends on the process of that, right? And then the third one that we have in terms of the biogenic source of the carbon dioxide, that it comes from the ethanol fermentations. So if you have the ethanol fermentations, then for example, 1 kilogram of ethanol that you produce, you get around 1 kilogram of CO2 that produced from the process, okay? So those are basically the potentials of that. And all this CO2 require to be captured for the microalgae cultivations. So once the microalgae being captured, then it has a fixed carbon. Then the fixed carbon, next it can produce a marketable product. Then we have a series of products that can be generated from the microalgae. So those are the things that we are can relate back to the carbon capture. Why using, when we use the microalgae, it can be one of the projects for the carbon credits, right? Okay, so let's look at the carbon sequestration mechanism from the microalgae. I skipped this one because it's too chemistry 101. So I know the background of the audience is not really, into the scientific, but we can summarize the mechanism of the carbon sequestration from microalgae with these 4 steps. Number 1 is basically the carbon dioxide should be absorbed by the microalgae, either from the direct absorptions or the other mechanism that we can do. So the carbon dioxide is absorbed by the microalgae from the atmosphere, and then once the carbon dioxide has been absorbed by the microalgae, then it starts to process it into the photosynthesis process. So under the photosynthesis process, we require the carbon dioxide and water, and then the sunlight coming is the light energy, and then it will convert it into the chemical energy and produce the carbohydrates. So once the carbohydrate is produced, then the microalgae start growing because they got the essentials, nutrients for them to grow. Okay? So once it's grow, then it produces the biomass, and then throughout the cultivation period, then it will be continuously absorb or fix the carbon in order to get more biomass for that. So these are the things that we are really interested in explore the potentials of the microalgae as a biocarbon capture, right? Okay. So if we look in terms of the microalgae carbon capture efficiency, so in terms of the carbon uptake rate, it has around 50 to 200 tons per hectare per year. In principle, microalgae can fix or can capture around 1.8 kilogram of CO2 with 1 kilogram of microalgae dry. Okay, so that basically the sort of like rules of thumb of that. And then in terms of the growth rate, it has around 10 to 30 times faster than trees, but it can get more, depends on the species that you are culturing. Because each of the species that you have, they have a different efficiency. Okay? So in terms of the carbon sequestrations, it has 400 times more than terrestrial plants. And in terms of the productivity, it has a very high productivity in terms of 30 to 120 tons per hectare per year. So I think I have to stand still because the cameraman keep dancing at the back. All right, okay. So this is the advantage when we utilize the microalgae-based carbon sequestrations, which is number 1 is a sustainable options. Because we know that when we dealing with the microalgae, it doesn't use any arable land that require for agriculture purposes, right? Because you can, like I said, we can culture the microalgae on the lake, on the river, on the sea, oceans, and whatnot. And then it has a high growth rate and then high carbon dioxide capturing efficiency. And then it's an on-site solutions. It's a flexible and efficient on-site solution that can be tailored to various industrial applications. And then it also not only capturing the carbon dioxide, but it also provide additional revenue by utilizing the biomass to produce various products, whether pharmaceuticals, food, and biofuel or whatnot. And it has a high CO2 uptake for that. Okay, so let's look on the biomass compositions, right? So before we go to the utilizations, we have to understand what are the compounds or components that we have inside the microalgae cell. Number one is the largest compositions that we have is a protein, which is protein we have around 50 to 60% from for example, 1 gram of the microalgae. This protein can be converted into the amino acid. That amino acid further can be utilized as a food source. And then the second one, we have the carbohydrates, which is sugars. It contains around 10 to 30% from the dry weights. And then the lipids. People have been talking about utilizing the microalgae for biofuel, biodiesel. That's the reason we have the lipids, which is the oil or fats inside the microalgae is around 20 to 30%. And then the last one that the pharmaceutical industries are really looking into it, which is a pigment, which is, it can be like fucoxanthin, chlorophyll and whatnot, carotenoids. It consists of around 1 to 5% of the dry weight from the microalgae, right? So from the compositions that we have, these are the potential products that we can produce. And then in terms of the food and beverages, we can produce a personal care, pharmaceuticals, chemical fuel, animal feeds, as well as nutraceutical and dietary supplements. Maybe you have heard about spirulina, right? People taking spirulina to get healthier. People taking chlorella also, right? Because it contains very high antioxidant. So those are the products that are coming from the microalgae, right? Okay, right. So this is the one that I'm going to show to you our current project with the Atoz as well as with the University Putra Malaysia. We are using the nature-based carbon sequestration in agriculture with microalgae. So the project is headed by Dr. Arina. Maybe you can meet Dr. Arina after this. She has a booth outside. So this is what we are doing is basically by utilizing the microalgae in the aquaculture applications that we find out that this microalgae can enhance the fertility of the soil, where it can improve the soil health by increasing the nutrient availability, structure, and enhancing microbial activity. And we can also using this microalgae as a pest management solutions, as a pesticide, because it contains certain natural compounds that can act as a pesticides. And of course, we can use the microalgae as a fertilizer, as a biofertilizer, that we can avoid using the chemical-based fertilizer to make the sustainable agriculture practices. Right. Okay, so this is, I adopt the slide from the Atoz, which is, this is, we call it as a soil regenerative agent, which is microalgae in agriculture applications, which is when you apply the microalgae, it can be as a nutrient enrichment, because inside the microalgae, we have the essential nutrients, for example, the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, on top of the carbon that we have in the microalgae, that can be used to stimulate the plant growth as a biofertilizer. We also can use this microalgae as a soil structure improvement, water retentions. This is based on the real applications that we are currently doing. We find out that there is a significant difference when you use a normal fertilizer, which is chemical-based fertilizer, versus the microalgae-based fertilizer. And then it can also balance the soil and pH, that later on it can give a better plant growth to your plants for that. Okay, so which is the one that we are interested is number one on the options on the slow release biofertilizer, where you have the microalgae biomass and directly drench to the soil, and then it can improve the growth of the fertile soils, and then it can also using as a liquid biofertilizer, like you can spray to the leaf, and it can be as a biostimulant. And then you can also use living algae as a biofertilizer as well. And then some of the microalgae species, it has a nitrogen fixation ability. Then it can fix the nitrogen, and later on it can benefit to the soil, and of course the plants will get benefits from that. Okay, right. So I think the challenges in scaling up the microalgae carbon capture and utilizations. Number one, in terms of the inconsistent efficiency in carbon capture rates, because you are dealing with the living things, right? Somehow they are not happy, sometimes they are overly happy and whatnot. So how to balance in terms of the growth of the microalgae is a big challenge. But throughout the years, we are experienced some of the cases, then we know by now how to deal with the microalgae. And then you need for advanced bioreactor design that can control in terms of the cultivation conditions, and then challenges in optimizing growth conditions. So one of the issues that normally people are facing when you're dealing with microalgae is the contaminations. So you will get contaminated by the other predators. Maybe it will be contaminated by their colleagues, their friends, as well as it can be contaminated by bacteria or either viruses. So it depends on you, the system that you are designing in order to minimizing the contaminations. So in terms of economic and logistical issues, it's a high initial investment cost for infrastructure, as well as the competition with cheaper carbon capture methods. We have many methods, right? Absorptions, and then membrane. We have the cryogenic and whatnot. So those are the methods that are already established, but in the microalgae, we are, it's sort of like the emerging projects that we are currently doing it on that. And then in terms of the regulatory and social acceptance for that. So it's very difficult to engage the farmers to change the mindset that the current practice, normally they are using the chemical-based fertilizer, but we are introducing the microalgae as a nature-based fertilizer. Then to changing the acceptance of the farmers is a hard work for us to do it. But with the Atoz, I think we are successfully doing it. And then we will establish on the methods for that soon on that. Okay, so benefits of the microalgae in agriculture. Number one, of course, on the carbon removal. So microalgae water can increase more than 30% of the soil carbon sequestrations. And then it also have the carbon avoidance, because the microalgae has the ability to fix the nitrogens. Then 1 ton of the nitrogen oxide avoidance is equal to 298 tons of the carbon avoidance, which is based on the global warming potentials theory on that. Okay, right. So tips for implementations of the bio CCUS by microalgae. Number one, you have to choose the suitable microalgae species, right? So some of the microalgae, they cannot fix the carbon, they cannot fix the nitrogen, but there is some species of the microalgae that have a very high potentials to fix the nitrogen. So in order for you to understand or to make the project successful, the number one, you have to choose your species is the right species. What we are recommending is using the domestic species or localized, or we call it as the indigenous species. So they are well adapted with our current conditions, right? And then it should be monitor environmental conditions. You cannot control, you cannot ask the rain to stop, cannot. So whatever that you have to do is basically you have to monitor the quality of the culture conditions. Then you do the precautions on that, okay? And then incorporate into existing practices. This is what we are doing. We have the microalgae, then we integrate with the agriculture industries to join in together and then meet and then to achieve the sustainable agriculture practices. And then the last one, what you need to have is basically to educate and to train the staff, right? So those are the important resources that you have. So when everybody understands what they are doing, then everything will be okay, right? Okay. So I think with that, this is some of the future prospect and research opportunities. In terms of the biorefinery applications, if you are focusing only on the carbon capturing, maybe it's not really, providing you a very high revenue. So what you need to do is basically you need to integrate with the other applications. For example, microalgae for agriculture, microalgae for pharmaceuticals, or microalgae for food applications. And then you need to have the enhanced cultivation techniques When you have more microalgae, meaning that more carbon dioxide that you can capturing on it. And then policy and market opportunities. Of course, we need a government support towards this green technology approach. And then carbon sequestration monitoring. This is the most important thing to make sure that whatever that we are measuring is a valid and then is a robust things that we are doing. So what we are doing currently is developing a robust monitoring tools and methodologies to ensure that accurate assessment in terms of the carbon capturing ability from the microalgae. I think with that, thank you very much. I think the microalgae, based on our experience, there is no doubt to be an agent for the carbon capture and utilizations, but it's just a matter of we need everyone to come on board, and each of you have a different role. So we have to make sure that everybody play their roles to make our world more sustainable. Right? So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Razif, for very engaging sharing about the role of microalgae in carbon capture utilization. Now we are open for the floors for any questions.
Thank you, Prof, for a very interesting presentation. Just a question. Will the microalgae that you put into the ground decay, for example, and what type of gases that were released when when the decay happened?
Right. I think maybe Dr. Arina knows well how to answer it, but I try my best to answer that. It's actually when you apply the microalgae to the soil, then there is a microorganisms inside the soil. So the microorganism will degrade the microalgae, and then it will release the nitrogens, phosphorus, and whatnot that having inside the microalgae cell. So when they release that elements, then that's the reasons why the soil become fertile. So they call it as a SOC, soil organic carbon, that you have inside the soil, that when you apply the microalgae in it, then it can fertile the soil. Because of the cells consist of the carbon, nitrogens, sulfur, phosphorus, and whatnot from the microalgae. Yeah. So far, no. We don't have that inside microalgae.
Hi, I'm Sydney. I have several short questions. The first question is, what happens, say, if the microalgae in a marine environment, when they die, does the CO2 has been captured, is released to the atmosphere again? And linked to the first question is, so what is the lifespan of the microalgae? And number three, so in a control environment, so I suppose in a marine, for example, like how the farm salmon are handled, that in a controlled marine environment, what happens when the microalgae is overly populated? I mean, out of control. Would that, because that would change the dynamic of the ecosystem? Has the researcher modeled this before? Thank you.
I'm answering your first questions about when the microalgae died. It's actually the capturing process happening when the microalgae are alive, because they are running in terms of the photosynthesis process. So during the photosynthesis process, then that's where the carbon CO2 is capturing. So when the microalgae died, then the process of photosynthesis has been stopped. So there is no capturing process happening when the microalgae died, right? So that's the first thing. The second things about, what else? Sorry, I forgot about that. Sorry? Oh, lifespans of the microalgae. Okay, sorry. So normally, it depends on the species, but rules of thumb, normally microalgae can survive as long as you feed with the nutrients, with the foods to them. So the lifespan of the microalgae, if you feed the nutrients for only one time, it has a lifespan around 5 to 10 days or 5 to 14 days. It depends on the species. Every 2 weeks, you have to put it a new foods for them to regrow back on that. So, but in the real applications, what we do is basically after 5 to 10 days, we harvest portions of the microalgae in the tank, and then we process it into the dried biomass, and then whatever the left microalgae that we have in the tank, we top up with a new food to make them continuously growing. So the lifespans or the life cycles of the microalgae normally 5 to 14 days. Maximum is 2 weeks for that. Right? Okay. The third one about
What happened? I mean, I suppose you grow them. If
Okay.
say a project, you grow them in a control environment, say
Yeah.
a marine environment,
Okay.
right? What if they are overly populated? Because as you mentioned, you cannot really control their growth rate
Yeah.
or the in numbers.
Yep, of course, we cannot control on that, but in terms of the monitoring, you have to be regularly monitored the quality of the water, for example, the temperature and whatnot, so that you can sort of like know what are the corrective actions that you have to do. So if you don't monitor it, you just leave it there, then it will be like the algae blooms. In terms of the nutrient as well, you have to make sure that they don't have so much nutrients, then they will grow beyond whatever their capability. So in terms of that, that's why when one of the slides, I'm sharing about monitoring the quality of the growth performance is very important. So that you know when is the time that you can do some corrective actions for that. Right? Okay. But normally in the oceans, if you want to culture the microalgae in oceans, normally you don't leave it, in the free suspended system. What we do normally, we have the floating photobioreactors float on the water. Then inside the floating bioreactor that we culture the microalgae. If you just leave it them to culture, freely on the water, in the oceans, your microalgae is easily to get contaminated. You will not get whatever that you want at the end. Because there is more dominant, for example, the microorganism living inside that. So normally it's under control environment.
Hi, my name is Lee from MyESG. Just to add on to what my colleague asked just now. So I see one of the application that you mentioned just now is the conversion of the algae to, let's say, biofuel, right? So personally, I see this is not much of the capturing the carbon, but probably just the avoidance of reliance on the fossil fuel, because eventually the biofuel that you're going to use is going to be burned and then released back to the environment. So it's just a cycle where you capture the carbon dioxide within X number of months, with your processes, and then release it back to the atmosphere. Am I right? Is my understanding correct? And then the second part of it is, you did mention about the biomass, right? You do separation, the biomass. So what typically will be used? Will you treat the biomass? Is it going to be, disposed, or it become a foodstuff? Eventually, you'll go back to. For me, I see eventually you will go back to the atmosphere, right? But degradation, biomass being, let's say, as a foodstuff, then eaten, and then eventually you become waste, and may eventually become methane. I'm not sure, which is even something that we don't want to see, right? Thank you.
Right. I'm answering your first questions about in terms of the carbon balance, right? So when we producing the biofuel that coming from microalgae, it creates a very positive carbon balance, meaning that your microalgae absorb the carbon dioxide, and then once they produce the biomass, then the biomass is converted into the biofuels. And then the biofuels, for example, the biodiesel or bioethanol, it produces the CO2. Then the CO2 will be released to the atmosphere, and it coming back to the microalgae photobioreactor. So it creates a balance in terms of the carbon dioxides, which is, it can reduce the greenhouse gas emissions effects on that. So the reasons of producing the microalgae for biofuels is not only looking on the biofuels, but we are also, looking on the the balance between the energy, whatever the carbon that you are producing, it has been consumed back to the system that you are producing that particular product. So basically, it doesn't have any excess carbon. It's a balance back because the microalgae obviously can't, consume the CO2 that coming from the fuel or whatever that they are producing. Okay, so that's number one. The second one is about, sorry, I can't remember that. The biomass. Okay, the biomass that you, leftover biomass after the process, okay? So basically, we don't waste the biomass as it is. For example, I give one example. If you use the microalgae for biodiesel productions, okay? So biodiesel is actually you looking on the lipids content inside the microalgae, okay? So you extract the lipid out, so you still have the leftover of the protein, as well as the carbohydrates, as well as the pigments for that. So this is when the biorefinery concept is coming in. So the leftover biomass, the worst case that you can do is using that as an animal feed, or you can use it as a fertilizer. That's a low, basically, we call it a low cost application for the microalgae. Low, not low value, but it's a low cost applications. But other than that, the leftover from the biodiesel productions, you still have the carbohydrates that you can using it and then ferment it and then producing the ethanol, right? And then the proteins that you can do, that you can extract out, then you can, because the protein having the amino acids and whatnot, you can use as a food process. So I think there is no leftover, biomass that you can dispose to the land. In fact, if you deposit on the land, it helps the soils to be fertile as well. So I think there is, the concept that we are introducing is basically the circular economy concept that we highlighted, that there is no waste from the microalgae processing that we are generated to the atmosphere, right? So that's basically the concept.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Razif.